Друзі, вітання, дякую за терпіння та чекання. Тема наступної прес-конференції – управління державними підприємствами енергетичної галузі. Нашим спікером є міністр енергетики та вугільної.
Speaker is the Minister of Energy and Coal Industry, Mr. Volodymyr Demchyshyn. You're welcome. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome. Greetings. We decided to change the topic of today's briefing. I suggest to talk about management of state companies. This is a very interesting topic and very correct one. We understand that there are many facts. The state companies are managed badly, and this is the main problem, basically, of the bad quality of services provided. They do not correspond to the price parameters, and there are several reasons of that situation. On the one hand, most of state-owned companies are monopolies, natural monopolies, historically. On the other hand, the management does not correspond to the requirements of time. And that is why during the last 9 months, we, in the ministry, we are changing the heads of these companies. I am convinced that the initiative of the Ministry of Economy on holding the competitions was the correct one, even though we see that many of such competitions are just delaying the process. You can do many things within the competition. There is some chance to manipulate, but the approach is a really correct one. In our ministry, we have more than 280 companies. Many of them are in the process of being liquidated and in the process of bankruptcy, and most of them are oil and gas companies, газовидобування, Укртрансгаз, Укрнафта. There's a long list of the companies supplying refinery products. During the first 3 months, I attracted several auditors into my financial team, several auditors from Ernst & Young. I tried to adequately approach this problem, because it's not just appointing the director or the head of the company is of importance, but also developing the financial plan and understanding the reporting. Without the financial plan and without the reporting, the leader, the manager can do little. But with the financial plan, you can really significantly influence the company. When approving the financial plan, we can optimize the expenditures, we can formulate the key indicators for efficiency and so on, and effectiveness. And that is on any type of effectiveness and efficiency. All the programs are being approved. The ministry has quite a big influence. So there are 2 options of how to influence the company. First, that's appointment via the competition. We had competitions in 34 companies, many. You know of some of them. In Укрнафта, you remember, in Укртранснафта, the Center Energa. In Center Energa, there was the competition held recently, where several candidates were selected, but again, the procedure of the competition is long and interesting, but finally, on more than 30 companies, for more than 30 companies, we elected the leaders. Then financial instruments, financial reporting, financial plans. Now there are many companies which are against approving the financial plans. And you've heard the discussion on Naftogaz, which is convinced that they're suggesting to switch to a new system of corporate management. And the principles reflected in this proposal, they are generally accepted. They operate in European countries. These instruments, all the powers of the supervisory board, could that be comfortable in Ukrainian conditions, especially when we are talking about the state-owned companies? That's quite a serious issue. I do not take any serious, any rigid position. I say let's analyze the risks, because depending on specific conditions, the result will be absolutely different. Talking about Naftogaz, in case of Naftogaz, which has very serious special commitments on supplying gas to consumers, plus the sums allocated from the budget, they're very big. And the control from Ministry of Finance, from the Ministry of Oil and Energy, the ministry, from the point of view of financial control, is probably the best instrument of influence. We are responsible for the technical policy of the development of the whole sector. We are developing it, we are approving it, and we can also approve the legislation. The finances, let the Ministry of Finance work on that, but until the companies are independent, it's probably too early to transfer the powers to independent directors. We don't have any really practices of how they work in Ukraine. But in any case, the competitions which we have in the ministry, they are quite open. At the ministry, we have a group, the nomination committee. It includes 15 persons, and the decision is made unanimously. In some cases, it could be unanimous decision making. In some cases, it could be by majority. Very often, the leaders who we have approved, we change them, we replace them. The situation is very difficult in the coal sector. Most of the directors are used to working not very transparently. And that is why when appointing the directors, we control, we monitor. I say that the law enforcement bodies follow them. Unfortunately, there are cases when that does not help, and we have to make a second decision. In some companies, they replace the directors twice, but unfortunately, the situation does not significantly improve. In coal sector, there are other big problems: lack of money for development, lack of funds for paying salaries. But besides, and that is what we can change, we can manage the cost. We have to efficiently use these insignificant funds that they have. If there are facts that the coal is sold for cash, it's sold not to state consumers. We have to make a decision. You probably heard this case with Krasnolimansky. The situation is very difficult in the company itself. You've seen that the workers support the head of the company. We do have the confirmed facts of abuse for big amounts. More than 3 million hryvnias have been taken out of the company. The law enforcement bodies are working on that. We met with the Kisilyov, with the acting director, with trade unions, and we agreed that from the ministry there will be the working group set up of the internal audit that will make an analysis and the decision will be made on who's right, who's wrong. The team spent 2 days in the at the enterprise. There was no information given to them. They came back. The act on refusal to give the information was made. And these leaders forget that is a state-owned company. Yes, I do understand that it's very close to the contact line, to ATO zone, and maybe the spirit is somewhat different in the air. That has to be taken into account. But when there is just a counteraction, on the other hand, you understand, the ministry is not a law enforcement body. My task is to collect the facts and to give them to law enforcement bodies. Let them work, and I hope that in the nearest future the correct conclusions will be made. And I believe that why I decided to talk about these facts, it is important for everyone to understand it, all the directors. If they think that they can lie to the ministry, they are wrong. The facts are collected and we will submit them immediately. I have mentioned that many times. Our internal audit, our division, auditing division, we have 20 persons who are working every day and they collect facts every day. And we actively submit them to the law enforcement bodies. I don't have the directors who we appointed for who I would be lobbying. They were appointed at open competitions. If people do not cope with their duties or if they abuse, then we will be very harsh to them. The questions later. Let him ask the question. Insider. In Krasnolimansk, it's very complicated. The location is complicated, but I understand that. My colleagues were in Krasnolimansky, and Kisilyov's people are saying that what they are accused in, that they are working in the leased company, but then with the assistance of Dnipro 1 battalion and so on. I know. So could you, in detail, explain how Kisilyov managed to take this 300 million? Was he selling coal to someone? These are the services of third parties. That's purchase of the equipment from some specific companies. That sale of final product at a reduced price. There were different facts. Very often people say people, miners, support him. You know, coal miners support the stability when the salaries are paid consistently. They support the adequate conditions of work. And in good coal mines, and Krasnolimansky is a good coal mine, it's easier to do it than at other coal mines, which are profit-losing. So we pay special attention to the coal mines who can pay not just the salary, but they pay for electricity. They can renew their equipment, upgrade their equipment. So there are bigger requirements to good companies than to bad ones. They have the opportunities. But if people abuse in these conditions, then another issue as to the reserves, that's also the problem. And such cases are not just characteristic for Krasnolimansky. In 4 coal mines, we have such cases. Half a year ago, we addressed the General Prosecutor's Office. There was no reaction. 2 or 3 months ago, I again went to State Geological Survey as to reviewing the procedure of allocating the reserves to these LTDs. We call them TOVki. That was positively perceived. The working group was set up. That had to happen long time ago, but I hope that in the nearest future the decision on returning these reserves to state property will be made. The licenses are issued not by the Ministry of Fuel and Energy. I was working on that. We submitted all the documents for approval so that the right to issue licenses is given to the ministry, because we're responsible for production of oil, gas, coal, but we have no influence on the process of issuing licenses. And that leads to all these difficulties. So now the licenses are issued under the Ministry of Environment, and I believe that in cases when these reserves were transferred to third parties, they were just using the infrastructure of state-owned coal mines, and they were not paying for that. There was a lot of abuse there. All these decisions are to be cancelled. Now, shall we move to question and answer session, or do you have anything else to say as to management of state-owned companies, I believe? So maybe you should finish your part. A high-quality specialist, you know. Unfortunately, the interpreter cannot hear. You've heard. I explain. It's clear with Zhuskov. I do not support Zhuskov. Zhuskov was the deputy of Kiselyov, and that's why these powers were redistributed to him, according to the vertical. How? Who appointed him? Did I appoint him? That is Kiselyov who appointed him. Look up at the documents. You can tell anything, but look at who appointed him when he was appointed. I had no influence on that. I do not approve the deputies. I do not approve even organizational structure. In Ukrenergo, I approve the organizational structure, and I have some influence. With the coal mines, no. Zhuskov is not a candidate. We reviewed the requirements to him, and we understand that he has no experience to manage this complicated coal mine. but we need to look for such a person. News of Donbass. They say at the company that the ministry blocks money and they have to sell at reduced prices. And I was at the court proceedings, and it's about stealing money. The investigator says what he stole is in the company. How could that? How can you steal and it could stay there? The equipment. Once we are saying that he sells at a reduced price, how can the asset stay there? The state, yes, the state does have 24 million is the debt to Krasnolimanska. That's true. Together, probably DVK, but the difference. One by one. Channel 24. For 2 weeks we have this heating season. Let's explain what we have, what we don't have. And if for gas, Arseniy Yatsenyuk introduced this social norm, and we have sort of a reduction for those who consume less than 200 square meters, will the same be happening with electricity prices? Maybe situation will improve with tariffs. Okay, briefly. On the website we have all the statistical information. You've seen that we have more than 2.6 million tons of coal. During the last month, additionally, we put more than 200,000 tons to the storage facilities in October. And I believe that the process was quite positive. To say that we lack coal would be wrong. Here's the graph. Last year we had 1 million tons less reserves. We do need coal. I explained several times that the consumption is 14% lower than last year, so any additional ton costs more. That's less than 3.2 that we were planning to accumulate, but 160,000 tons were ordered by Centrenergo. They will arrive in the end of November, beginning of December from South African Republic. Plus, it does not include the reserves. About 100,000 are on trains, about 400,000 are in Pavlograd, in storage facilities. If we compare apples to apples, last year we also had some volume on trains, in storage facilities, so it's more correct to compare 2.6 to 1.6. We have less than what we planned, but more than last year. The last 500 million hryvnias were allocated to Ashadbank. This money has not been used. I believe that is additional resource which will have its influence. And the weather conditions are quite soft, so further accumulation will continue, may continue. I hope that it will continue. In October, more than 200,000 400,000 additionally came to storage facilities. That's the trend, which is quite positive. And I believe that we have prepared quite less consumption of gas. Compared to the last year, it's less, 16.9 billion BCM of gas and storage facilities. Additionally, we received some additional from Russia at 110, 114 million by the end of this month. We will increase that reserve by till 17.2 by the end of that month. That is more than last year, but I would like to remind you about the reduction of consumption. That's not 19 billion that we were talking about. To accumulate 19 BCM in storage facilities this year will be impossible. You've heard that there's some additional funds from EBRD, and they also can be used for additional purchases, but now the consumption is quite big. The gas which will be purchased additionally will help us keep a certain level in the storage facilities. We'll keep it at the level of above 17 BCM. When the consumption starts in November, December, then you see the consumption is quite active. From the point of view of preparation to the heating season, we are ready, but any money will be useful, will be beneficial. And what else is important? The next slide, please. Actually, the collection of money. Again, unfortunately, you see within the gas, the collection is not so good. That's a bad signal. That's the first month, the first step, but that's a problem. I hoped because there are subsidies which will help those who cannot pay to pay for their because of subsidies, the level of collecting money had to be higher than here historically, but this month the statistic shows just the opposite. So if our reserves are good, if the consumption got reduced, but people do not pay, maybe that's the reason to review the tariff so that people pay. Well, this statistical data is very early, and it's too early to make any conclusions. As to reviewing tariffs, I believe that the main thing is the availability of the resource. Payment shouldn't be the reason to review the tariffs. Those who cannot pay, they have to take subsidies, and the state has to compensate the difference in accordance with the legislation. But to reduce the cost of gas for everyone, like we believe that about 40% of consumers can pay for gas. I mentioned the money that are not received by Naftogaz, and the budget compensates this money for them to purchase gas. That is our money, the money of all of us. For those who consume a lot and who have money, we help them reducing the price for gas. We help them improve their budget. I don't understand why we should do that. But from the point of view of the industry, we are influencing the competitiveness. Those who pay full price, they compete with those who manipulate. They have additional, they save. The competition is unfair. Some has additional support because they consume cheap gas, and they kill the competition who pays taxes, pays salaries. That's unfair. Thank you. We have 5 questions more. Okay. Argus Media. What's the situation with the import of coal from Russia? Anthracite from Russia, very small volumes. We receive, but very small volumes. I know that Center Energo received a small volume, Donbass Energo. In October, I believe dozens of thousands. Why these volumes are so small? Because there's no need. I believe we also understand that it's more expensive compared to what we receive from ATO zone. $65 plus minus at the border, plus minus $2. And what we receive from ATO zone is cheaper. So I understand that the generation is trying to maximize their margin. There's such a thing as reserves. Can you show the next slide? There's a statistical information on the electricity. The situation is slightly better with electricity. It's interesting with the water channels. 69%. It's now, it used to be less than 60, 52, 55 when we started presentations. Look at old presentations. That's quite positive signal that finally the Vodokanal water channel started paying. Can we talk about some plans? No. I don't know the figures. In the balance that was developed by the ministry and approved by NERC, there are all these figures. There's a line import, but they don't specify whether that's a Russian import or South African import. I believe that the import by the end of the year will be not less than 1 million tons. I know exactly about South Africa, it's more than 500,000. I know that the agreements are signed with Russian Federation for 100, 200,000 monthly, but historically that I see that these volumes did not arrive. We can make some forecast, but it hasn't been confirmed historically. Two plus two TV channel, could you please tell? That is again what you are expecting, Sliva. Lugansk Vugilla, is it operating now? Because it's not located where it's registered in Kiev. Do you have any information where the director of Lugansk Vugilla is? No, I have no information. The company, I did not check whether it's active. I know that it was re-registered about a year ago from Lugansk to Kiev. It's registered in Kiev. but there's nothing at this address. That's just registration. Most of the companies which are in ATO zone, they were registered to Ukrainian territory to get a legal address, to get all these tax details for paying taxes. We understand that they wouldn't move. The coal mine is over there. But was this person appointed by you? Or are you planning to dismiss him? I explained. I have not received any additional materials that I requested from the prosecutor's office. So I don't have any grounds to make any decision on personnel. There was no competition for Lugansk Vugilla. But when I was talking about competitions, I would like to say that there are companies, big companies, more interesting. There are many companies where very often we have no people who would like to become directors, even though there are acting directors. Very often one person submits the documents for competition, and the competition is moved to some other date. I understand why this is happening, because on the one hand, we do not we cannot suggest some good salary, like salary of 5,000-10,000 hryvnias. On the other hand, the responsibility of these people is very high. And there's a responsibility which is serious in any company. Every company has some history. Some have documents that they were developing. Some have contracts. And the director, understanding that he has to work and be responsible, but on the other hand, he's not paid money. The budget doesn't allocate money enough to support the personnel. And we do not allow him to steal. I tell everyone, we follow you. If you abuse your position, we will send you to special bodies. So the alternative, without a real decision that we've been discussing in the Cabinet of Ministers, without raising salaries, without defining the mechanism of compensation, we cannot demand anything from them. We can say that some companies have some extra number of people they have to get optimized, but without clear system of compensation, that is impossible. What's the real price for Russian gas? $227. How much? Depending on calorific value, the calorific value changes it from $4 to $7 per 1,000 cubic meters. That's not a big amount, sum. That's additional payment. No, 227 includes this additional money for calorific value. Главком. Energoatom transports the nuclear fuel waste to Russia for processing, but yeah, the agreement is signed, the contract is signed. we know that Chelyabinsk plant is doing that for many other customers. Their icebreakers. Do you believe that they will give not our fuel back to us every batch? Has a very detailed specification, but where in what we send there is a clear specification what was in each batch. So they're not returning anything back. We're analyzing the possibility. They have received the draft contract. You know more than I do. The agreement was signed in 92 or 96 when you said that there's now the draft contract. As to the necessity of radioactive fuel waste management, we have set up the working group and we are trying to understand what should be done with this waste. Should we agree on the zero option, leave them there? Or now talking to Americans, to Westinghouse, to Honeywell. They also are working, they are processing, and you can use it again. So this working group has our specialists and we are trying to understand what we're talking about, what materials, when was it sent, what could be done, what's the cost of storing this waste. That's one of the options, zero option. Someone is lobbying it and they write in mass media, Demchyshyn wants to get this waste back to the territory of Ukraine. I don't want anything, I don't know. First, you have to understand what we gave and what could be done with that. Talking to Americans, I understand that there are different options. They process this fuel and they use it again. That's a certain cost, certain value, but before it's processed, they will have to return it. We maybe can use it immediately for reprocessing to Honeywell plants. There are options, but we need to analyze it all. You know better. Two questions from Day newspaper. How could you comment that near Cabinet of Ministers there's now the tariff Maidan being organized? What could be the consequences for you personally? And second question, you mentioned that you were against the plan of Naftogaz as to reform of management, but you did not say about your plan. What was your plan? We always want to have something better and always get as usually as to tariff Maidan. I believe that's a political event. It started before the elections. It's interesting how it will develop. I suspect that political attention will go down and the organizers of the event will make a decision to switch to another form of negotiations. The consequences, this is the issue to be discussed, to be analyzed. Which compromise? We've been talking about that for the last 9 months, that there's a working mechanism. of targeted subsidies. And this mechanism should help address the problem. That is a real problem. I agree, there was a question about tariffs for electricity which went up. The problem with the electricity is not that big because the average volume of consumption is smaller. The average check is 78 hryvnia for electricity. And for gas, in heating season, about 801,000 hryvnias, the average. I mean average. That is why this issue is very material. I believe that the mechanism how to compensate, how to address this problem, what could be the solution to reduce the price for gas, but how the difference should be covered. The money that is paid as subsidies, you understand. There will be the subsidies. Last year we had subsidies. Volodymyr is a state-owned company and it has to develop. For the last 10 years we were oppressing it and the production goes down. People say it's going down because the licenses are transferred for joint use. That's easy to follow up. We know each JV, how much they produce. Let the law enforcement bodies work on how the licenses were issued. But the volume of gas выдобывания goes down. This year it's more than 500 million cubic meters less than they produced last year, not because they transferred it to someone. You're just comparing apples to apples. So we will depend on external suppliers. The plan of what? We need to change the corporate management. We need to enhance independence, quality of decision making. We need to strengthen the personnel potential. That's the correct decision. The question is when and how quickly. And I mentioned till Naftogaz receives the support from the budget, it's too early to do that because the state has to influence. They say that there's a minimum influence of the state. Whether that's enough or not, that's a philosophical question. Then the property right should be with Naftogaz. There's resolution 360, which means that these companies are state-owned. Now legally, there will be no changes. I mean, but this will be owned by Naftogaz. How will dividends be paid? Via Naftogaz. Naftogaz says, yeah, we are ready to automatically rechannel the money we get to the budget. We even today have many requests from Security Service, Prosecutor's Office. The money that Naftogaz gets to their accounts as dividends, they are to be channeled to the budget. There is a certain collision, it should be addressed. We understand that Naftogaz got big money from creditors, Gazprom Bank, the creditors who potentially have access to any assets. There's a law on the transportation, we remember that, but if the decision is made in other jurisdictions, the decisions can be made not just on transferring the assets, but on blocking the accounts and other assets of Naftogaz. These are complicated issues. And because the companies are very material with high value, the risks are high. Besides, if the process of privatization starts, maybe in the future we'll be talking about privatization or partial privatization of газвидобування. In the future, we understand the private owner is more efficient. Газвидобування could be partially privatized. When the market is better, again, there are problems. All the money go to the budget, to Naftogaz, then there are issues to be regulated. Plus, it was about dividing Transgaz into gas transportation system and the system of storage facilities. Dividing the company, I'm not talking about organizational administrative structure, but they have creditors. They will have to get the permit from creditors. This needs to be done. There are different opinions on whether the gas transportation system should act as the system of pipelines separately and the storage facilities separately or together. I believe once it's one whole complex, it's full-fledged. Some parts of assets could be not involved if we are talking about separate. We understand there are 17 BCM in the storage facilities. The total number is, volume is 31. Then there will be competition between storage facilities. Some of them will go bankrupt or will have no money. How will they be? It will be financed. The discussion is not simple. It should be happening among the specialists. It should be happening. The specialists were invited. They expressed what their understanding is. There is a discussion going on. Besides, we were talking about unbundling of the functions, transportation, production, and marketing. That's what we need to work on. That's fundamental direction. We understand that we need to improve the competition in oil and gas complex, and the World Bank is doing it. Thank you. Next question. Thus, we know that 2 payments were made to Russian Gazprom, $370 million regularly. They pay. Was there any advance, other advance payment? I don't know. I suspect we need to clarify. I believe that they paid 370 1.5 billion, I believe. How much? Has anyone calculated? We know that there's a memorandum with Australia being developed. What does the ministry want to add there? It's about uranium concentrate. Ukraine is an importer of uranium concentrate. When we were in Kazakhstan, we had quite fruitful negotiations. Kazakhstan is ready to supply uranium concentrate. They produce about 20,000 tons that they do not consume in Kazakhstan. They don't have their own nuclear power plants. Australia is the second potential supplier. We're trying to diversify the supply. So we are working on that. Interfax Ukraine, one question. In урядовий кур'єр there was an exploration that Nadra Yuzevska is now opening the competition for Yuzevska area. Does that mean that Shell left the project? And as far as I know, the several court proceedings were initiated in Nadra Yuzevska to take out SPK Geoservice from there. What is the general situation with that? Maybe you will say a few words about Eni and other Western companies that had to work to operate. There are few companies like that now. The works are not being, there are no operations going on there because of the world prices. These developments are not economically feasible. Shell, more than half a year ago, left. They were saying that this investment is not interesting for them. Nadra Yuzevska. There was a long procedure of how Shell was informing that they are leaving the project. That was because of force majeure on these territories. And there was an opinion of lawyers that in any case they will leave the project. That was that the leadership was talking about that, and legally we understand that. The company itself, Nadra Yuzevska, they accumulated some assets. They got some data on research of the territory, exploration data. Shell brought some equipment. There are some assets left in the company, and to liquidate it would be not feasible now. That's all done under state geology survey, under the Ministry of Environment. They are organizing the competition, searching for new potentially interested participants who would be ready to enter the project. The terms of the agreement are clear. That's the subject for analysis. Any foreign investor can analyze the terms, and if these terms seem to be favorable with such world prices, possibly someone will be ready. So I'm sure that this project, this competition, will be very brief. If by the end of the year they do not find new investor, then they will stop discussing this issue and the company will be liquidated. Talking about SPK, SPK signed an agreement on leaving. They have either left or they will leave when there's a new investor. Maybe they already left the project. There's now no offshore company in this project. There will be no offshore company there. That's the condition for looking for new investor. When the new investor comes, there will be no other participant but the state. Could you say that all the contracts with Shell are cancelled? Well, Shell left this agreement, and this is a big area. I don't know whether you will be able to attract a large investor on Chevron area. There was a situation when Zinovy Kazytsky, Western Ukrainian businessman, attracted some Germans, but de facto he failed to start works. Maybe this area should be fragmented. There's the sense to listen to investor. If the investor comes and says, I'm interested in some part, we'll think about that. Now, there's no one to negotiate with. I would like to learn, you say 19 BCM, to have 19 BCM by the end of the year is impossible. Then how much can we have by the end of the year? By the end of the year, it's difficult to say. It will include the one that is burnt in November, in December. There will be big volumes consumed. I can talk about some forecast. In November and December, the reserves will be consumed. If we understand that there is some additional resource, this 300 million from EBRD, we hope that will be 500 million additionally from the World Bank. At 3:30 I have meeting with the World Bank. If this money is allocated, then this will be consumed not so much. Then more global question, what is the volume of gas which Ukraine will purchase from Russia during the whole winter period? And what will be the volumes received from reverse from Europe? As to percentage, we have not calculated, I believe. Now the situation depends on funding. If we understand, there will be the tender for the first and the second credit. The tender will be organized, so this will be pumped from western border. But talking to EBRD, we understand that even Gazprom can be a winner. They can pump from the western border. Theoretically, we'll see who will be the winner of the tender. If Gazprom pumps in from the western border, should they be classified as European? Okay, agreed. Now, pumping is tied up to availability of funding. Who wins in the tender, we do not know. Let's have tenders and we'll understand who is the supplier. From the point of view of the theory, I said, if there are no extreme temperatures, then this volume is enough. To not to buy directly from Russian Federation. Cannot hear. We can cope without Russian, only with reverse. But we see the price is getting balanced because these conditions were approved. The Western direction reacted. The price for reverse is now less. Two quick questions and we'll complete. Finish. One more question only. The heating season has started, but the gas meters which were to be installed by Kyivenergo are not in the buildings. People are not against paying, but they want to pay for consumed heat, but not for square meters. We can ask NERC to check it. Yes, we'll do it. No. We cannot hear the... Okay, let's check. I cannot say. I will initiate this check, the inspection. Back to what you started with, my question is, there is a person, Andriy Vengrin, he's your advisor. There are many publications that he's a bad person, very bad. Just tell us, what person is he? Does he influence the appointment of leaders of coal mining companies? Unlike many other specialists, he's quite knowledgeable specialist. There are many people who consider themselves to be very knowledgeable, but they're not such specialists. In fact, he promotes good concepts, good ideas. It's easy for me to talk to him. All the decisions are made by me, or they are made, if it is a competition, by a team. If it's about acting, then that's me, and then it goes for competition. I disagree that he influences. He knows many people, many directors. So I do take his advice. Globally, his understanding of what's happening in each coal mine is of interest to me. That was the last question, Mr. Minister, and have a nice meeting at 3:30.